Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with a guy. Hey, I'm Justin, the guy. Hey, I got myself a 5200 Carbon OCLV, made in the United States, road bike, and this is my next bike I'm going to be refurbishing. Looks like it's pretty good. It has vintage Ultegra componentry throughout, so you got Ultegra brakes, front, rear derailleur crankset. Comes with the Rolf Vector comp wheels, which were back in the day pretty good. If I was going to top my head, I'm going to think it's like 2001-ish, maybe 2002, somewhere around there. Workhorse bikes, they were solid. I mean, these things just rode and kept on going, and that's why you'll see quite a few of them still on the road. So that gives you kind of branding, not necessarily today's branding, but not today's branding at all, but this gives you a testimonial that some of these bikes, they held up for so long, and they keep going and going and going. Solid workhorse. So I'm kind of excited about this one because it was actually in pretty decent component state. It did have its broken covers here, which is pretty much typical for this vintage. I have some replacement ones I can put on there. They're not OEM by any means, but at least they don't look as ugly. So essentially I did my top 20 things to check for, going through a bike, check the wheels, made sure the hubs, felt the crankset, went through the shifters. The shifter's a little sticky, but this particular type of shifter gets gummed up over a period of time because the grease that they put in there initially hardens, and that kind of prevents those pulls. So throwing in a sonic cleaner and cleaning up is going to be a pretty good deal. So going to be ready to go on that. So well, this particular bike, I'm just going to tear it apart, take it clean all the parts like I do with all of them, inspect the frame, do some detailing, make sure it's all clean and ready to go for the new owner, and go from there. So looking at these particular bikes, here we go. So going through the top 20 list, I'm ready to dive into this guy. So first what I do is I take the wheels off so I can start removing all the componentry. So I got the front off. Take the rear. So a lot of these parts I clean, even the skewers and sonic cleaners. It's nice to get all the gunk out of there. Then I wash the wheels in the tub behind me, you can see, and that helps me get the first layer of grime off of it prior to cleaning the rims with and then cleaning this, truing the wheels, that kind of thing. This one's kind of nice because it has matching skewers. Sometimes bikes of this age will have a skewer switch out to a trainer skewer and they don't know where the original one went to. So taking off the cassette, I use a chain whip and a cassette removing tool. Chain whip sits on the cassette, holds it in place while I can get some torque. Get that lock ring off, which is this booger here. Then you don't need the chain whip to put it back on, just to remove it. That's how you get the cassette off. Check that, seems good. Since I do replace majority of the cables, I do just cut the cables. It's just easy as tearing it down. And the housing seems a little short up front here, so I'm going to replace that. Usually do anyway for road bikes because the housing gets worn internally. There's like a sleeve inside, and it's like that. Cable goes back and forth. It's like a saw, if you will, like those saws out in the wilderness. You cut yourself, and then I inspect the chain. See if it has a master link, which just does not look like it. I will be checking the chain for stretch too. Making sure it's good to go. If it's too stretched out, I'll put on a new one. So I'll clean this one, get the same. I just keep the cables as reference, just in case it's just to match it up. I do when I cut the next ones. And I'll have to determine the size on this guy too. So, you know, looking at the head tube, it looks to me maybe a 56 or a 54, but without actually measuring it, which I can do right now. So this guy is 56. And this is where before they went to compact, so it's a little easier to identify because the head tube will be the same length as the down tube-ish. So that way you're not kind of lost on like, what size is this? Because when they go to small, medium, larges or compact, it's like you have to look it up. And that gets really confusing really quick kind of thing. I missed both of those, by the way. So yeah. So 56, that's a good size I need to add to my stable. And when I purchase bikes, you know, I try to be size conscientious of what I currently have. But if it's a nice bike, I know that I can do a really good job with, and it's going to be a good bike for somebody at the end of the day, I'm going to grab it anyway. So sometimes we'll have a run size of multiples of one size, and it'll be like, you know, I got 8 52s and no 54s, and then I'm like, okay, I got to really think about what I'm doing here. But I try to keep like a good, better, best in each category when I have the ability to purchase and pick and choose, which is nice. So I'm trying to keep all the bolts with the actual parts so they don't get mixed up and cleaned. Oh, this one also I noticed too, and I caught this at the beginning. This is cracked jockey pulley, so I'm gonna have to order. Actually, I have one as a spare, but I might have to order another one. That's actually a better way to seeing it right there. These guys just dry out. And it's pretty common of those, that particular vintage. So, anyhow, pedal wrench, pedal forward to release. So, get that guy forward on the opposite side too. And these cranksets have self-extracting bolts, so I'm not going to have to use a crank puller, which is nice. And yeah, got those in there, so I'm using, I believe it's a 8. So it'll break free, then it gets tight again, and it goes up against the extracting plate. So you can get that off, like so. Same thing for the opposite side, but these are screwed in normally. And this one I checked it felt smooth, but now that confirms that it was smooth. So I'll not need to worry about replacing the bottom bracket. I do have a plate here, which is threaded in with a bolt, and that's the cable guide. I like to take these off and clean them too. And the little parts go on the strainer, but that's the cable guide right there. So, got that cleared off. Same small wire wrench. Take off these barrel adjusters, barrel stops, or housing stops. Sometimes they get stuck on there. I'll show you a trick on that real quick. So yeah, what was really cool about these bikes back in the day, this is before they shipped them overseas, and they actually made the pieces. So this would be one lug, this would be a tube, and they glue them together. And I was talking to a couple of customers yesterday, and I was explaining to them, I totally forgot that you know, carbon could be repaired. Back in the day when Trek actually did build bikes in the United States, they could repair these, so you can send the frame back. So if you damaged it here, they can take it apart by ungluing it and putting a new piece in and gluing it. Granted, it wasn't cheap. Oh, man, not the suck. Oh boy, these guys are tight. They were not assembled with any grease. So this is one of those things where, you know, full contact metal to metal, actually aluminum, or actually steel to aluminum contact. I just know that they were not assembled with any grease, and typically when we put these together, that part was not installed. So, you know, we didn't really realize it until after a few years anyway. So I can't really fault them too much. But yeah, whew. I have to let that one go for a little bit and soak it. And I got bottle cages to contend to. And these look like, well, this one's missing bottle cages mounts on this side, so I didn't catch that when I picked it up. Here's the thing, if it's missing bolts, it might be okay, or it might be stripped out. So we're going to take a little peek here and see if it's stripped out. If it's stripped out, well, more work for me, but I can fix it. You drill it out, clean it out, get all those spare, those shavings out of there. Then you refit in a new fitting with a kind of grommet gun. And let's just hope these are not stripped out. Okay, let's hold our breath. Oh, okay, we're safe. All right, yeah, all right, so this is good. Yeah, we're fine. They don't feel loose or anything. They just took the screws out to take off something that was already on there, whatever was there on the predecessor. And these were a little sticky, so these are definitely going to be going in the sonic cleaner to clean those up and get you to come out. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, sometimes these get a little screwed up in there. That's where these little guys come in handy sometimes. And pick it out. Oh, there we go. Whoop. Hopefully this guy comes out easier. Got to release it all the way down for it to go through there and break cables. Like so. And for me, to clean out shifters, all I need to do is just get them removed. And I'll leave the mounts on there, then I can cut the barb tape off later. But for time, that's what I do. Boop. And the mount's still in there. It's fine. It's just a little tricky if you haven't not used to doing it. And getting back on there, but they'll eventually go on there. The hoods look like in pretty good shape, thank goodness. You still can get hoods, which is this black part for these guys. Oh, I'm using the wrong side. That's probably why it's not falling in there. There we go. And feel engaged. There's a little slot on there too. Take these guys off. Whew. So, there you go. Got a little bag full of parts here. I do need to clean out. Ooh, that's dirty. We'll clean that out and put some fresh hot water 2 parts hot water, 1 part simple green, and my sonic cleaner. And then the heating element also will keep that the liquid hot and actually work itself way into those little bits and get all that extra old gunk out. I do pre-treat a lot of this with a degreaser. A lot of shops like to use simple, not simple green, but clean streak from White Lightning. Use the White Lightning as the White Lightning lube. The lube really cakes up, but the clean streak works really well. So you want to get it in there, but also you want to make sure you don't spray your eyes so you don't go blind, and get in there, and always wear safety gloves so you don't get those little chemicals on you when you pre-treat it. I pre-treat some of the parts. Then I put it in a sonic cleaner for like 5 minutes, 4 minutes where the pre-setting is, pull it out. And then if I need to reshoot any of those things that are being a little stubborn, I like to have the simple green work its little bit of magic first to soften that stuff up so I can really dive into and really get those parts clean. So on to the next part. And now on to cleaning parts and then inspecting and cleaning the frame. Onto the wheels. So this little gem had some raw vector comp wheels. These were the predecessor of all the paired spoke wheel systems out there. Trek acquired Rolf back in the day. Now he has his own thing again, and they just got purchased by another company. So Trek had them for a little while. Rolf went his own way. Von Traeger did the paired spoke as well for a few years. And hey, guess what? Fast forward to today. Oh, we went back to just regular paired spoke, whatever. Anyway, these were the hot ticket item, which is kind of cool. You know, the blue matches the blue decaling. They did some coloring as well. What makes these really cool? Super smooth hubs, paired spoke bladed system, a little lighter, less spokes up front, still very smooth after all these years. You can replace these cartridge bearings. These have been very, very solid. So, you know, it's one of those things where the rim well on these have been pretty substantial. It has a lot of meaty material on there that actually lasts a long time. So these are awesome. Even today, these still go on eBay or whatever for like $200-300 for depending what kind of condition they're in. But most likely these are pretty awesome little wheels. So what I'm doing to get this bike refurbished is I'm going to clean these and then true them and inspect them to make sure they're ready to go on this bike. So without further ado, let's jump into the tank and wash these off, which I found out to be a lot easier than instead of hand scrubbing each one of them. Once I wash the wheels in the tank, I just use a light, kind of like a dish soap, and scrub it down. And the reason why I use the brush is get to all these little nicks and crannies. It's a lot easier to kind of flood it out and also get through these the rim itself. So I found it to work really well, cleaning the front and the rear. And it's not the final phase, of course, but it just gets like the initial gunk off. So we're gonna put it on the training wheel. It's a little more easier and cuts down the time that I have to scrub in that case. So working on the rear wheel first, not in any particular order. That's just kind of how I have it set up from the previous. And the first initial one I do, I use a little bit of Armor All. This is a bulk that I put in a bottle here since I go through so much of it. And that way I can clean the rim as well as the tire at the same time. First I just do the initial wipe down. I did check the hubs beforehand, so they are smooth and not loose, so I don't have to worry about adjusting those. Seal bearing ones you usually don't have to adjust too much anyway. They don't develop a lot of play like the loose bearing ones were. So essentially first I clean off the rim. Then, like I do during an inspection, I go through and just kind of clean between each spoke, like so. Then I clean off the spoke blades. Then I clean the hub. And doing all this, I'm inspecting all the parts. So what makes up a wheel? You got the hub, the spokes, smoke nipples, and the rim tape, and tire, and tube. Cassette and the skewer will go on after this, but that's all the parts that are included in circumferences, the actual wheel itself. So when I'm inspecting, I'm looking at all these spoke nipple holes, eyelets as they're called. And then sometimes they'll have a little metal grommet for the spoke nipple to roll on or to spin on. These are just straight onto the actual alloy rim. And that's pretty common with these deeper dish wheels, like so. And what I'm looking for when you're truing it, you're looking for it to go back and forth. That's centered to the rim, and also there's no hops. So it's the three-dimensional thing when you're actually doing this. Typically the rear wheel will have more of the chance of being out of true due to the fact that it has most of the weight on it. And also when you miss things with the front wheel, you'll sometimes smash into your rear. So that's the case, but these are pretty solid and they're pretty true to begin with. And these are kind of tricky to true because you have like these gaps, so you kind of have to, you know, do little light adjustments to get that rim to move over and not to move over too much. So that looks pretty good on that one. Oop, drop spoke wrench. And this one has an old computer, so, well, the computer's off of it. It just has an old mount. I like to save these magnets and use them around the shop for hanging up tools or whatever. It's kind of fun to do things like that. So, I'm going to do the same thing on this guy. Spray my rag. I don't spray directly onto the rim. Use the rag and then wipe it. That way I can coat the tire too to make it all nice and shiny. On both sides. And start with the valve core and cleaning between. And here I'm inspecting and looking at these spokes, making sure there's nothing that's damaged or questionable fatigue or cracks or any of that nature. And again, same as the rear, looking for any hops or anything. Usually this won't be as bad. And these wheels are pretty true to begin with, so it's not like I have to do a lot to them. Yeah, like so. So definitely cleaning and inspecting is a very, very important part of making sure that these wheels are sound and true and safe. Safe is the biggest thing. Like that. Ready to go. Spin around. So after I have the wheels trued, I go on and proceed to put the cassette on. I like to put a little bit of grease on this free body. Kind of keeps it from not seizing up on there, because I've been in places where there's a lot of humidity, and if you're in a place with a lot of humidity, you know, corrosion can build up underneath this, and that makes it booger to get these guys off. So, and these are keyed, so they will go on there a certain way. Use my lock ring tool. You don't need the chain whip you only need the chain whip to take it off, not to put it back on. And now for the quick releases. And obviously the quick releases are two different lengths. One's for the front, this one's for the rear. I like to do on these guys is put a little dab of grease here. Same thing for the cog. Grease these guys up. Same reason, so they don't seize up. And on the front, it's not really directional wheel, but the logoing is. So if you look at the logo on the back hub here, you know, looking at it, a bike going forward, you read it this way, you want to do the same. So you want to do the skewer on this side. And when you do the tire, if it's directional, you want to do the same on the same direction. Just kind of professional touch. Also, you want the valve core to match up with your logo of the tire. Like I've referenced before in other videos of how to fix a flat. That's a good place to reference point so you know where you can track that flat or the cause of the flat down. So, wheels are ready to go on it. But first, before I do that, I need to clean these parts. Well, they are clean. Need to lube them, make sure they're ready to go, then install them. Then the wheels will go on last, and we'll go from there. But first, what I want to go over is after I clean all the parts and they're all ready to go, is the equipment that I use for polishing and detailing. I use the Adams compound and polishing materials, as well as their disc pads and also the Dremel pads as well. A combination of them for several different pieces that I need to do. Looking at anywhere between scrubbing, light sanding, to buffing, to polishing. All those particular pads come in very useful to every part of doing the detailing of the frame. Because the frame itself will have all these different little blemishes in different parts of it, which I comb it inch by inch and clean up every section as best of my ability with using those particular pads and compounds. When you're doing this yourself at home, you probably want to do a section that is actually not seen, maybe like the bottom of the frame or bottom of the chain stays. That the way you can do little test areas and see how those polishing compounds and sanding works. Always light and polite to start off with. What I usually try to emphasize on is do extra time on is the top tube and the down tube and the seat tube, the main part of the frame. Reason being is that's where the most visual, noticeable, first glance, best impression is. But that doesn't mean that I don't spend a lot of time on other parts. It's just those particular areas. Also, plus it's a little bit bigger area to work with, so I can really get into making that section more even and smooth and access it with the tools. So there's all these little nicks and crannies, and sometimes I just can't get into those with the tools I have as much as I would like, but I try to do my best on doing so. So let's dive into it. And I'm going to do this top tube section here so we can get a good example. We have a little blemish here. It looks like a little scuff in the clear coat. The decaling could be cleaned up quite a bit. And a little bit of scarring here on the clear coat. Now, I did knock on this and it seems to be, integrity seems to be just fine. But just want to make sure this is all cleaned up so there's not any kind of questions and make this thing polished like it should. So let's dive into it. First, what I like to do is do a good cleaning of it. I use Purple Power diluted, and that way it gives me an opportunity to just clean the surface really well. But it's a little kind of potent, so you want to be careful and not inhale too much of it. Now that is getting all the gunk, grease, sweat, blood, sweat, and tears off the frame. That kind of thing. So I do the whole frame on that, but here's a little section, and then dry it off and kind of get a clear area where you're actually working with in this section here. First, I like to use the compound, just a general cleaning at first. Reason being is I want to just have a good look of what I'm working with because I can visually already see a couple areas, but I'm going to get a couple other areas I want to address before I use a wet sand technique, that kind of thing. Once that polishes compound has been put on there, I can take this polishing rag and kind of get a good look and see what kind of stands out. And as right off the bat, you can see it's starting to already polish up really nicely and really kind of give a shine. We just want to address those areas where it might be a little more problematic to clean up and still show. So like that scuffing of the clear coat has kind of gone away. We still have this one here, which is a little bit deeper in the clear coat there. And looking at the rest of this, it's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit in that area there. So this particular frame, it's actually a carbon, and the carbon, well, it is a carbon frame, but the carbon is a nude, and they didn't paint it. What they did is just put a clear coat on it. The carbon here actually has a design of a pattern of the last sheets that were combined, and you actually, what's kind of cool with this is actually see the gusseted areas where they actually bond them together. These are pieces. So this piece was made individually, then this one too was made individually, and then there's slit together, glued, and then you have one piece, and they do the finishing work, and then they clear coat it and put the decal on it and clear coat it again. So it has a pretty decent clear coat on these guys to work with. So you have a little bit more to work with the material. Sometimes you get frames where it's very thin, so you got to be kind of careful and light when you do those. That's why I suggest on each particular frame that you're going to do detailing with sanding and that sort of forth, do the bottom first and kind of see how temperamental or non-temperamental or how thick the paint is to work with on that. Now we're going to do some polishing. All right, then with a fiber cloth, I do the final buffing, put some elbow into it. So now those little scratches are pretty much non-existent to the visual eye. There's a little divot there, but that's kind of buffed down smooth. So you'd have to really look at it just right in the sun to see it, or a strong light. And that's how I detail a frame. So from here, I'll do the rest of it piece by piece. First, again, to recap, I clean it with Purple Power, or you can use like Windex or something that diluted, wipe it down really good. There's also some stubborn areas. You can use a clean streak to get some paint that's maybe been on there from falling against the wall or something, or old stickers. And then I use a compound from Adams with a combination with a 3000 grit to get the scratches out. Then I use a buffing pad after that to get all the micro scratches out that you can't visually see. It just makes it shine. Then once that is done, clean it off. Then I use the actual polish from Adams with a buffing pad, and then I use a fiber cloth to wipe it down. So I go over this section, as you just seen, about 5 or 6 times. So that I'm getting the frame to shine as best as it can. In addition to, I'm also inspecting to make sure there's no damage as well. Got the wheels done. Now I got to start thinking about what I want to put all these little parts on there in tidbits. So before I do that, I do pre-lube and also scuff the brake pads and get them all ready to go. So when I work on these and get them all clean and ready, starting with the rear derailleur, I do put a drop of lube on the pivots because it's been sauna cleaned and there's really no grease left in here. So that gets it back to life there. I did replace the lower jockey pulley on this one because it was cracked, where this one right here. So I got a new one on there. And also put a little bit of lube on here. Sometimes they're sealed, so you don't need to really necessarily put lube on there, but I guess the rear derailleur going. Also like to do it on the bolt, also the barrel adjuster, so it makes it a little bit easier. So that's the rear derailleur. The front, I do the pivots. Can't move this around until I get it mounted, but that's pretty much what I do on that guy. On the brakes, I put a drop on the pivots, also on the barrel adjuster, and on the actual bolt mount as well to get that going. Then I like to take a little bit of the sandpaper It has a glaze on here, so I like to scuff that off. So it gives a better braking surface, that kind of thing. Do the other one real quick. Like so. And go ahead and lube this guy up on the pivots as well as the bolt. And on the shifters, these have been maybe lubed because the Sonic cleaner is taking all the lube out of there, which is good because it was all caked up before. That's the front, here's the rear. I like to use, it's still a tri-flow, but I like the aerosol version because it kind of foams up and kind of seeps into all those little parts, like so. And the chain, I did measure it. It does measure to be less than 0.5, so that worked out really well. Yeah, less than 0.5. And these guys, these are barrel adjusters that go on the frame. Same thing, a little bit of lube goes a long ways. Make sure it protects it, that kind of thing. So there we go. So what I like to put on first is the crank. So we'll just dive right into that. With the crank set, I like to put a little grease on this hollow tech spline bottom bracket there. Now that does is kind of keeps it, makes it a little bit easier to put on, and you use the number 8mm. And these are teeth on the inside there, so you kind of have to line them up. Trick is this is vertical on the other side here, and what I'm looking for is it being vertical as well, so it matches up and slides in like so. I can kind of feel it and gauge, which is great. So that means I can really torque it down. Get it in there. And on the left side, same thing. These have what they call a self-extracting cap. So you can take these off without using a crank puller. But if you need to, these screw out, so you can use a standard crank puller. There's two types. Well, there's several types of crank pullers, but for this vintage, there's two types. And this one's for the Holotech bottom bracket one, which is a little bit bigger. There's that. Ready to go. Oh, and one other thing, I need to put the cable guide on there. Cable guide. These made a little nice fancy ones. They were made out of stamped steel. It's chrome polished. Just screws into the bottom. You don't want it too tight. This is threading into carbon, so just enough to hold its position. So after this, I throw on the front derailleur. The front derailleur is what they call a direct mount or braze-on. So it doesn't have a clamp. It's already built into the frame itself. And when these were new, they had a little piece of tape on there, a little piece of plastic with 2mm marking on it. So you knew how far up. Basically, you want to be 2 millimeters above, or 2-3 millimeters above the big chain ring. Then also centered in this plane as well. So height and angle. That looks good and it feels good. There we go. Front derailleur on. Now to the brakes. The front brake, I like to put a little bit of grease on the actual mount here, or the bolt. So when it slides in, it doesn't get too corrosive. And you just tighten it back up. And I don't tighten these up all the way, because when I do have the cables and housing routed, then I can adjust it. And I just needed to have it hold into place. Like so. Onto the rear. Slide that in there. Same thing. Tight, but not too tight. Just enough to hold its place so I can maneuver back and forth. And once it's adjusted, I can lock it into place on that. So on this guy, I'm going to switch out the handlebars. It's the old Icon with a generic stem on there. So I've already remove those, but in the process, since I'm already taking this apart, I'm going to check this headset and clean it and re-lube it. By doing that, I just pull it out, and these are cartridge bearings, so it's not going to be really much maintenance to them per se. Just a little bit of cleaning and wiping down and inspecting. So the bottom bearing feels pretty good. Wipe off the excess grease. The front one feels pretty good. And there's this little guide or cone. And these do pop out like so. So that one. Clean that out. Put some grease on there. Put the bearing back. A little more grease. Get this back up. Crown. Cap. Spacers. This one has a converter in it for a 1 inch to 1 1/8. Not gonna need that because this one's an 1 1/8. So I'll put the stem on there. I want to make sure it's below, top bolt is below that crown. So get on there. There you go. In this case, it's just going to be a little bit of lip, so I'm just going to put the extra spacer on top. So when I put my adjuster cap back on, I know both bolts are secure. Around that steer tube. And we'll adjust that when it's all assembled with the wheel on there, so I can make sure it's tight but not loose and smooth. I know, it sounds kind of weird, but that's how it goes. Now I'm going to get my little cable stops put on. These have two different types. So the barrel adjuster one has threads that goes onto the front derailleur. This one's the rear derailleur one, which is matches. So those just go on top, like so. Okay. Thread right on there. Like so.
So by doing that, this is 4 bolts. Like so.
And tighten these 4 guys down. Angle bars is really a personal, well, kind of a fitting situation. I just kind of leave them more parallel to the ground, just for, you know, for aesthetics. It pictures a little bit better that way. And then we can do those adjustments when somebody buys it and needs to do a little bit of fitting adjustment on that. But I kind of do the standard straight down or straight across. And these are angled with extra grip on them. It's pretty nice little bars. Now for the shifters. These I did disassemble, so I have to put these the band clamp back on there. Line that up. This is the 5, goes in here. Feel like catch a little bit, but whoop. These sometimes are like to be tricky. You feel like you got it, but not. And I'll line these up where the housing for the brake will fit into here. It's kind of just give that gauge. I'm just going to snug that right there for a second. And measure this to about a 1/2 inch there. Tighten it down. Same thing on this guy. Follow that angle, kind of massage it up the bend. There we go. These two can be a little tricky. Yep. And these I can do adjustments too when I start stringing the cables. So the rear wheel goes in these dropouts, flush, tighten your quick release. Center it there. My derailleur hanger alignment tool. And this is where I measure the rim with the pivot here. And this one is bent in. You don't want to go too crazy because this is not replaceable without a lot of trouble. There we go. And that's a line, so that helps the derailleur to be perfectly vertical on there. Now for the rear derailleur, the V tension screw, you got to make sure it's over and above that part. And this derailleur should look vertical this way. It goes back and forth like so. So for the chain, since we already knew the chain is not stretched, so I have it cleaned. And then I'm going to use a quick link to attach it. So when it needs to be cleaned again, it's a lot easier to use. 9-speed quick link goes in here, each side. Slides into place. And at this point, I like to lube the chain. So while I do all the other stuff, the lubricant is seeping into the pores of the chain that's been cleaned. I like to use the Rock and Road Pro Gold, but there's a lot of lubes out there. You can do a whole bunch of research on that. I just seem to find this to work really well, and it's easy to clean. Usually go about 6, usually it's 3 times to do the chain once, but I do about 6 when it's been stripped. Get that back in there, like so. Once the back is on, then I put on the front wheel. Tighten the skewer till when you flip it over, it catches halfway. Make sure it's flush on the dropouts, and good to go. So that's pretty much it for lubing and installing the parts and getting them ready to go. In this particular video, that's pretty much going to cover. The next one is going to be the stringing of the cables and also wrapping the handlebars. And at that point, then you do your minor adjustments and make sure it's all fine-tuned. And after that, you're pretty much ready to go. But this bike has really turned out really pretty. The paint is, actually the clear coat is really buffed out and it actually pops really well. It's really, really shiny and nice. All those little chips, they had a lot of little chips and some little scratches, but a lot of them do buff out really smooth. You can really only tell them in like a direct sunlight or if you're really looking for them. But other than that, the frame looks pretty immaculate. There is no questionable areas or cracks or damage to the carbon at all. And actually, this is definitely a diamond in the rough. It looked kind of sorry when I first got it. I did inspect it pretty well. Didn't find anything major. Fingers crossed with every bike, you never know. But for this particular case, it turned out really well. So without further ado, on to doing cables and housing and wrapping the bars. But first, we're going to string up the cables. So let me dive down and grab some cables that I have. We're going to need 2 brake cables and 2 derailleur cables. All right. So I like to do the derailleur cables first. And you release the derailleur all the way down, or the shifter all the way down, so you have a clean line of sight through the shifter itself. Like so. So it matches in there. And on the other side, same thing. So, and pull that all the way through. To make sure they're in there. And then onto the brake cable. And I don't string this until I'm actually ready to do the cutting of the cables and housing and adjustments, because I don't want the housing or the cables to be dangling and end up stepping on them sometimes and it'll kink them. I want a perfectly non-kinked cables. So they're all nice and tucked out of the way. So I've got those guys. Now I'm gonna cut some housing and get it all prepped. I do have the old housing, so I'm gonna measure that out pretty close and double check it, and I'll show you how that's done. But first we're gonna cut, well, actually let's just go right into double checking them. This is the derailleur housing that was on there initially. What you wanna do on this is have the same amount of bend. Since I did switch out this bar and stem, I actually brought it in closer so it was more of a bow to it. I might want to trim this back a little bit so it's not as long. The rear derailleur should be about the same in the back here, which I want to add a little bit length to this because I want to have a nice bend to it, not a kink, so the cable actually has a smoother direction to pull from it. In the front, Brake cable looks about right. The rear brake cable. And you want to make sure it fits that bend. So that looks really good. It may have been on short there a little bit originally. These are for the rear brake from the stop here. Very, very specific length. And they're a little bit that way and that way. Gonna make a big difference with the bend in it. This looks like it's pretty good. So I want to definitely match this one for sure. So now to pull some cables and cut them. So you want to use the cable cutter for this guy, and I'm gonna need a file, a poker, and a modified spoke. And I ground this down to be a poker, but it has some ridges on it. I'll show you the reason why here in a moment. And then, since I'm an older lad, I need some spectacles. Actually, this way looks a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to start with the brake. Brake housing is different than the shifting housing. So I got a bulk down here, so I'm going to measure it up, cut it. There's the rear, and I just match it 1-to-1, cut it. There's the front. Here's the, tuck that back. So here's the old one, here's the new one. And you can see this one's clear and this one's boogered up. So we need to make sure the boogered up ends are cleared off. So by that, you want a clean cut. So sometimes you have to recut this. So that little burr part is gone, like so, but that's not done yet. Now take that. Then take a file. In the shop, you'd use a grinder sometimes if they have one. Get that excess plastic piece off. So it's nice and flush. And that's where that modified spoke threads ground down comes in really handy, because you can really pick at that excess material that's inside and pop it out. Get it in there and get it out. And then you take a razor blade, cut that piece off, and then it's nice and clean. Rinse, recycle, repeat, right? You've got 5 more of these to do. So try to catch that lip. Clean cut. File. Super clean. That's that one. That's the old one. Here's the new one. Voila! Now, onto the shifter cables. And just to remember, I wanted to do these just a little shorter and do the one to the radiator a little longer. So it's a different housing, and the brake is coiled, so it's a spiral, and shifters is splined, so it's multiples splined out. So I'm going to make it a little shorter. I take the new one and measure it side by side, pull it together so it's even. And then for the rear, I was going to add a little bit. I'm just talking about like a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch length extra, like so. Tuck that back in. Doesn't get unraveled. Well, these guys, they all pinched because of the cutter. So I use this poker to give me a clean hole for no obstruction of rubbing against the cable and mounting the end pieces. Here's the trick of the mounting the end pieces. So you got these, and this is the end pieces, the caps. And I saved the old derailleur cable, cut off the frayed off part. So I'm using this as like an installer cable now, since it's been used and kinked. It's good for this, but for installing, this is the trick. So I put the cable in there, put a drop of lube on that, so the fitting of this fits over, compressed, but there's a little gap in there. It's pressed, so you need to use some pressure. Instead of doing it on the bike, I can pre-compress these. I'm going to show you here with a tool using an old derailleur cable. If I can get it to get through the cable cap. So once that is on there, pull the cable through. So on this end is the derailleur stop of the cable, and this is the cable here. I'm going to take a cable puller, and when I push this, it's compressing the housing into the caps, so it's nice and tight, so it's pre-pressed. So this housing should be pretty good to go, and it'll be a minimal compression causing a farce of stretch cable. So I do that to each one of these. All three of them. So the two front and rear shifters, this is the shifters, and the one that goes to the refrigerator. And that's what happens when you use this. It kinks the cable to a point where it doesn't want to pull through sometimes. That's why you can reuse it. So see, it's like catching there. So what I'm going to do is just is it frayed right on that end. So just bloop and throw that away. That's how I pre-do my housing. So now I have my front and rear and derailleur shifter cables, and I have the brake cables here. I have the end caps already installed on those. These I will, for the brake, there's going to be only two, I believe I'm going to need. One to the rear brake and one to the rear caliper. And the front doesn't need it because the shifter and the brake caliper itself has the fittings already pre-built, but this goes into the actual sleeve into the frame, both here and here on those. So without further ado, we'll just jump right into this. All right, we're going to start with the front brake. So this metal piece covering is going to go in the frame and the open end. Without that, you don't want to put it in there because it's already designed to take that fitting. Sometimes you'll see people, they'll put a fitting in there and it'll jam up in there. It's not necessary. It's okay if it's in there, but you'll just need to get some pliers and needle nose pliers to pull them out. So get this guy locked into his position, and that fits right into that fitting. Like so, I think. There you go. Onto the front. Tighten that down, clamp that. Sometimes when you put the brakes, they'll compress inside here, be more of a snug fit. Don't want to feel sloppy at all. And once it's tight, then you tighten this guy. Then you'll adjust that afterwards. And onto the rear. The fitting piece goes into the frame. The non-fitting goes into the Shimano brake caliper. The Shimano brake calipers are already preset. They have a fitting already. The other brands like Tektro, SRAM, they don't. So you'll need to put a fitting on both sides. Same concept here. Tighten that bad boy up. Hit the brake so it presses inside the shifter, brake loader. And it should feel very crisp because it's brand new cables and housing. And on the back, hit the brake. The reason why I'm hitting the brake, it compresses it and centers it, and then tighten it back up. And you should be pretty close at being centered with a minor adjustment. So that's the brakes. Make sure the cables and housing are not binding. And we do the front derailleur, which typically goes onto the left side of the bike. Then we do the front housing of the rear. And here's the tricky bit. You don't want it to come out here, you want it to loop inside. The reason being, that brake, you don't want it to bind up. It also gives it a cleaner flow for the cable. Oh. And you see how it goes through here, goes out, and not obstructed by that brake. If it goes out here, it may tug on this and cause the brake action to happen, which would not be good. No bueno. And that cable guide that we showed earlier, you can thread that through there. Get your housing. And make sure this goes in there so you have a nice, smooth bend. And you tighten that cable up. And for the front, find that guide that's going through. Sometimes they'll pop out and just be rubbing up against the frame, not the cable guide. But you want it to go against the cable guide. So I don't know how many times I've seen those. It goes right there. And there you have it. Cables and housing. And then now it goes to adjustments, and after I've adjusted, then it's so what's remaining on this is bar tape, which is quite obvious. in addition to some fine tuning and throwing some pedals on it, and it should be good to go. This bike has been actually a gem to work on. The paint itself pops, it's or clear coat, and it's carbon nude painted over. Actually is bringing it to pretty good life, and the componentry was in really good shape. In addition to the wheels are awesome. This is going to make somebody an awesome beginner entry level, or even the next step up entry level road bike. It's going to be fast, quick, and you know, it's one of those things that's a tested and tried true. They've had this particular carbon frame for several years until they switched it out to a different design, but they did keep the bonding portion of it for a lot. They've been doing that for almost over a decade. So it's actually a really good solid bike. So without further ado, let's dive into this after my cup of joe. First I want to do is start the bar wrap, but actually not complete it. I'm just going to tape these housing pieces down. The reason being is I want them to be in their position and ready. So when I do adjust the derailleurs and brakes, there's no question or change, if you will, when these are actually put in. So sometimes, not saying all the time, and it probably shouldn't, but once you compress these down, sometimes it kind of changes the cable a little bit. So you want to have this pretty much set by the time you want to do your adjustments. So you're not readjusting afterwards or thinking it's adjusted and go for the ride and it's like, oh, it's not adjusted right. So we will do this first real quick. Just use electrical tape. You can use color if you want, but black just seems to be the go-to that I have. And these particular bars have an indentation where the brake housing fits into, like so. And first I do the corner, that kind of pushes it back. Then I do right shy of where the bar tape will end, like so. Then I double check, make sure there's no binding of any cables and so forth, because that could be very troublesome, especially if you have to wrapping everything, like, oh man, I gotta take it all apart. Nobody wants that, so we're gonna just go forward from there, and it looks pretty good. I'm just gonna wipe off a little excess grease that I had. Keep it pretty. All right, now I'm gonna throw on the pedals. Now there's a right, it'll be marked right here in the R, and then there'll be a left on here to be installed. So let me show you how those are installed. So we're putting on the right one and pedaling backwards, and this is R, which would be your right foot, and the R would thread in that way. And these don't have a 15 millimeter clamp, so you have to use the Allen for these particular ones. And you just thread them in like this, like so. Then give it a good little snug tight. And then on the other side, like that. And when you're on the downstroke, on these particular Allen ones, you want to bring it in that way, tighten them up. So those guys are on, ready for some shifting and adjustment. First, when I do adjustments, to start off with the rear. First thing I'm doing, the cable tension. So each gear, as each goes up, each click. Then just a limit screw here so it doesn't throw it off, so it prevents it from this direction. Then I adjust the L screw lower, which is the bigger cog, preventing it from going into the spokes. So, it's range. Then when I'm on the big and on the small up front, I'm going to adjust that limit so when it drops, that smaller one there, back it off just a smidgen so it doesn't run. While I'm at that position there, the cable is released at the lowest tension. Then I adjust the cable, tighten up the cable so it fits with that range. So trim. Then I can use my barrel adjuster, pick up a little bit of the slack. So I'm going to go down to my high limit. Fits that trim. Also goes in the big ring. And adjust the limit screw to prevent it from jumping over off the big ring. Like so. I got a little bit of a lube spotter after I did lube it before. Now I'm going to wipe off all the excess, and by adjusting the degreaders, I gave it an even coat with a little bit of light lube on each one of these cogs. And this is a dry lube, so it'll eventually dry. Leave a Teflon coating, and it's ready to go. So after I have my brakes adjusted and they're centered on those and also my derailleurs, I'm ready to cut my cables. On this one I like to leave it a little bit longer so I can actually fold it in, cap it, and zip tie it down. Usually you leave about 2.5 inches on the brakes, so just a little bit below where the brake portion ends. I like to leave them a little bit long because when you go to repair or switch it or do a tune-up, you can reuse those cables. If it's too short, then you have to replace the cable. So that just gives you a little bit longer life of the cable with just being the service aspect of it. And for this one, I'm going to go with blue for the cable ends. Got to be fun with it, right? You know, it's like one of those things. So I need 4 of these little boogers. There we go. Park Tool does have a tool for this. After all these years, I just use kind of a cable cutter here to crimp these down. Give it a little bit of detail, customization. Blue matches the decal and also the wheels. Here's a fun little trick I've learned over the years. So this guy sticks out, right? You want to bump in your leg each time you pedal. So you take a small zip tie and you loop this down onto the cable that goes underneath. Pulls out of the way. And the reason why I put a bigger loop, so it doesn't bind and fray. And another great tool to tighten up zip ties is a cable tensioner. Kind of presses it in place, like so. You go to the pedal, clear. These are all good to go. All right, on to taping. So to recap, bought this bike used, and it was pretty dirty, kind of a diamond in the rough type of situation. And but I knew what I was getting into and what needed to be replaced and what not to be replaced, and it actually turned out to be less things than I thought after more detailed look. I thought the chain may need to be replaced and possibly the cassette. Those are actually still not been used very much. This bike hasn't been used at all. The scratches and everything are on it are probably just mainly garage worn or thrown on a bike rack and transported. I think the kid that had this was using it for a trainer for a little bit, which usually trainers' bikes don't usually get too much because it's kind of a boring experience. So most people don't really get too involved with that, quite honestly. So in this particular vintage, yeah, it is getting up there in age, but compared to today's bikes, it's still pretty solid. It's going to do what you want it to do for road riding, and it'll be an excellent beginner entry level road bike. And it's one of those things where, stage my stuff. So yeah, this will be an excellent bike for somebody to start off road riding. And when these bikes were coming out back in the day, and this also has a triple, so it has a smaller gear for like grinding gear for climbing those hills, which is really nice. And triples, when they came out, it was a game changer because here in Colorado, we have hills and mountains. And what was kind of strange is those manufacturers, it's not something that dawned on anybody until later, kind of much after the mountain bike scene, because the mountain bike scene actually kind of developed the triple chainring, and it was not really applied to road bikes until a lot later. And I remember we would do a lot of conversions. One was the STI shifting in the brake levers. Back in the day, it was just a down tube shifter, so you had to deal with that. And on top of that, the triples came out, and then we had to do a lot of crankset shifter conversions. So people wanted to shift up here, then they wanted to change it to a triple. And that lasted for a couple years. Then the truck came out with a bike called the 1220. And the 1220 was a aluminum bike, and it had lower and mid-range componentry, and it was kind of like their first bike to kind of dive into the triple for climbing, and game changer. I mean, we would stock 2-3 run sizes, and we were a small shop, so to invest that much into road bikes, and this was right during the mountain bike heyday too, so it's kind of like mountain bikes are so mountain bike, and I was in it. It was like mountain bike race, and road riding, it was still there, just not as strong. Get started. Which was kind of nice. That componentry kind of technology carried over. And also at the same time that Shimano gave up on Biopace. Biopace is, Google it, it is the funniest thing ever. And now they're kind of bringing it back, which is kind of bizarro to me. But anyway, that's just a thing. But with that triple, it kind of, got people back into road riding. And this is all coinciding when Trek started purchasing a whole bunch of bike companies, Le Mans, Gary Fisher, Klein. It kind of led into that. Then Armstrong started having this heyday, and that really brought road biking back to the forefront after being put on the back burner for so long because the mountain bikes were a huge thing. And one of the reasons of the fall of Schwinn is they didn't accept mountain biking as they thought it was a fad. They thought it would just go out of style. They didn't really invested into it, which they had their own problems, and that was not the one reason why they went down. And you do still see Schwinn today, but it's owned by his fourth or fifth company by now. And for a while there, they had an investment company that was actually making some pretty decent bikes. So a few of the older ones are good. Some of the newer ones are all pretty much department store brand. They ever so often try to come out with a model or a line that goes back into independent bike dealers, but they're pretty much a department store brand. But with all cycling world as of today, it's changing so much that some bigger power plays, I think it's Dorel owns them now. And there's another company in Europe buying up a whole bunch of bike stuff, and then there's Trek, and they're Specialized. Those are kind of your big and Giant, big manufacturer companies, and they're still they're kind of conglomerated, ganged up, built up. A little bit of Armor All. Clean it up here. On to the next side. So, and this bike, when I'm getting at to a long story, not short, is Carbon OCLV was a game changer for Trek. It really put them on the map or actually brought up carbon bikes to the market. And they had carbon bikes before, but this was a big leap. And then they kept it for a long time. And it changed the world of cycling. I mean, you know, the carbon here was jointed together, and back in the day, if you damaged one of these tubes, you can have it taken back to the manufacturer and they'll glue in a new piece for you and repaint it for a price, of course. But all that is done out overseas now, so they don't have that service. But don't be afraid of carbon. Carbon can be fixed more than, well, it can definitely be fixed, and aluminum can't. So if aluminum frame fails, it's done. Carbon, there's carbon fixers everywhere, pretty much nowadays. They do pretty much, the carbon's such a big piece now that they use it for a lot of different things. And there's people do specifically just bike carbon repair locally and overseas. And the neatest one I saw was some video of a guy that has a company in Europe. I forget the name, but what they do is they'll match the actual carbon type and the wall thickness of the repair that you would not even know that it was repaired, and then they have a paint booth that paints it to match the actual paint of the bike. So if you have a high-end road bike that you got damaged and you want it repaired, there's an option. I mean, obviously there's cost to it. Oh, my sister's way over there. But I just thought it was just fascinating to see how this guy just did a simple repair for himself. And then he's like, oh, this is a thing. And now he has a whole company in Europe, England, I think, that does that. Excuse my reach around. Oh. There we go. Beautiful. So so when you look at a bike like this, and yeah, it's a little bit older, but this is where the launching pad of the technologies for carbon were kind of accepted and kind of changed the path. And today's standard, yeah, they have a lot nicer, but to start off with, I mean, heck, this is an awesome bike to be one of your first road bikes. or even your second to start off with. It's a pretty awesome little guy. It handles that the carbon takes up all that vibration. It's lightweight. And so this will definitely make an awesome bike for somebody. Got these little stickers here to prevent cable wear. Like so. We'll add a detail. And also my tag. Gotta tag my bikes. There we go. No, I'm ready to hit the road. Find a new owner. Hopefully it finds a very happy home and gets a lot more thousands of miles put on it. Again, if you like these videos, please subscribe and like it. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Again, from the garage.